Welcome back to another episode. As I stated in my shorts video, this is going to be an in-depth look at the Pentax K-3 Mark III full autofocus system. I was at the Airshow over the weekend, well, last weekend, and in about an hour and a half took over 780 photos, pretty much bursting to try to get the perfect shot. Now, before I get into the actual autofocus system itself and show the images, keep in mind a lot of the images just didn't work due to environmental factors. It was extremely hot, very hazy. You know, it happens in air shows. It's just one of those things that happens, and there's not much you can do. But with that said, there are a lot of sequences. As if you have watched the shorts video that I did, you can clearly see the sequence. It was like watching a stop motion video of the jets flying across and everything. I used everything from AF.S, AF.C, zone autofocus, select, full auto, everything in between, to see how the camera would react to various situations, and seeing as it was a constant environment in regards to the subject, just planes and jets. It was a good opportunity to switch back and forth using, keeping in mind with the action element of photography, just to test everything out. But instead of going on, let's just get right into the findings in regards to the autofocus, and I'll explain the thing that I think is going on with the algorithm, and let's just get right into it. Okay, so as I was shooting, I was switching back and forth between the HD 55-300 PLM and the Sigma 170-500 APO. Now, this shot here was just done in select using the center focus point. It's not bad. On the computer though, it is very hazy. It is a very hazy shot, but it did acquire focus. So, as to be expected, seeing as it's just a single autofocus point. Now, I'm going to go across here and get into some of the ones where the camera had to focus or had to do some tracking. Now, here is the original, this is the autofocus point that was used, the red dot that you can see here. This is the actual autofocus point that was used, and there's the center. So that worked. That actually did work. And here's another shot. So it did actually work. This one, it was that. One thing you learn very quickly is fighter jets create an insane amount of heat. So, I mean, there's just a haze of heat all over the jet. It's not the easiest to get perfect, especially when it's extremely far away. It just makes it even worse. So as it was tracking, this is the autofocus point that it used. So it went from that. Now what should have happened is the autofocus point should have ended up somewhere around here instead of further back. So it seemed to lock on to the previous shot, which is this one, right? Versus just the clouds, right? And the center is just over where the jet actually is. So let's go to the next one. It's a tad bit better, still a little off. And this here, it couldn't find anything as the jet was flying. Actually, you can see this little light post here, ended up in the way. And I was using the shutter button because I didn't want, I was trying to avoid using back button focus just because I didn't want the camera getting tripped up in regards to if I had accidentally, moved my thumb off the autofocus point. I wanted the camera to acquire focus no matter what. So here it's saying it couldn't quite catch focus, and it is a bit off. I will give it that. It is a bit off, so that is correct. I did not have autofocus hold on. Just because of the tracking as the jet was flying towards or away. So these ones here seem to do a pretty good job. relatively speaking. And, you know, it's all pretty much in the center. That one's a tad bit off. Now, the thing is, these black dots here, I don't believe are actual autofocus points. So it is difficult for the camera to, with those autofocus points missing, it's difficult for the camera to really be able to utilize the next nearest focus point unless it's 100% on that location. So it can only pick from what you see here in red. So subtle changes such as this to this, it's going to use the same autofocus point, even though it's not quite there, because the jet would be where that black one is. So it hasn't moved far enough away to get to the next red autofocus selectable spot. Which, I mean, you know, it is still better than the 27 autofocus points that we're used to having in previous Pentax cameras. And this one's off. I mean, there was just so much haze and glare, and yeah, it was pretty bad. Let's see, this one is way off as well. Okay, let's see. So this one used a lower autofocus point, and that was just as the jet was banking. So the jet was flying across down here, and then it just ramped up. And it happens so fast. So I guess at the point of when I went to take the shot, the jet had then changed its direction. It's a little off, but it did pretty much get it. Now let's see here. Let's move on to the next area here. So there, it caught it. For the most part, got that one as well. Got that. Next red focus point, yep, got that. So it did do a pretty good job, and here it missed entirely. Why? Couldn't tell you. I don't know if it tried to focus on the clouds instead of the jet itself, but it did miss, as you can clearly see here. And like I said, I was using the shutter button, so there's no reason why it should have missed, to be honest. And this one here, there we go. Nice burst of air, and yeah, all that heat coming off. Yeah, completely blurred, but it is actually in focus. It's just strange to witness these things. And here's another one that missed. So I think the predictive autofocus does have a bit of trouble, and here it completely missed. The jet was down there, and it focused up into the clouds. So it's hard to say. Here it apparently had no autofocus point, even though the jet's pretty much in the center. So I don't know why it missed there, missed here as well. And that's a pretty big spot right in the dead center, so it should have actually been able to pick it up. Let's see, where else did it miss here? Missed right here. And again, pretty big area. Big contrast between white and black, dark. And here it decided to go for the clouds again. So I think at times it seems that the predictive algorithm that they're using is either a bit behind, or in some other cases I actually found that it was a bit ahead. Okay, that one it nailed. It got that one. That was good. Let's see here. Yeah, this one's a tad bit off. And I think, again, it's because it can't use the black area. It wasn't close enough to the next red autofocus point. So it's just one of those things. And this one here, that was off. Okay, let's, where is it? It has too many images here. Okay, so this one, I believe the autofocus algorithm was ahead of the location of where the jet was actually going to be. And that so it is slightly hit and miss. And then from there, I thought, you know what, enough with the select autofocus. Let's use the subject recognition and see what happens if I change to that. And let me just get to that location here. All right, so using full auto. Okay, so again, environmental haze. Actually, that was more to do with the lens. I remember this plane now. So it was a screw-driven 17500 APO lens, but for the most part, it did actually acquire the location of the subject for the most part. So it actually did a pretty good job. It seemed to recognize where this actually was in comparison to the select autofocus. And some areas it is a tad bit off, but for the most part, it actually did nail it pretty well. And then I switched over to zone, and here it says there's no autofocus point. Here it picked an autofocus point. And here as well, it's a tad bit off. That one's just by the propeller. That one's at the propellers as well. So this actually did do a pretty good job. It actually did a very good job. So it seems zone autofocus, if you want to pinpoint more of where you're focusing, it is best to use the zone autofocus. And, at the same time, you can also move the zone around, which I will get to. There we go. Where is it? Right there. And here. Now, what I was trying to get here was the helicopter, but for some reason it picked the opposite side here. It should have picked this side for the zone, but for whatever reason it did not. And then I went back down, and there it actually worked. So, the K3 Mark III seems to really, it's different than anything we're used to. In the previous generation cameras, it was a more basic autofocus system. This one, you need to absolutely nail the autofocus settings that you want to use in order to actually be able to get the best use case for focusing. And that person just walked right in front of me. But yeah, it's just completely different. So you kind of need to, I guess in a matter of speaking, start all over again in regards to what you already know regarding the autofocus settings for Pentax cameras. This is not one of those cameras. It is completely and utterly different. Let me just skip over to AF.S. Okay, so in AF.S, let's see where it picked here. It's pretty close. Pretty close. There's the guy getting lifted up into the helicopter. I didn't have the helicopter in that one, and then I switched over to portrait shooting. And as you can see, here's all the autofocus points that, whoops. Let me go back here. There. All right, so here's all the autofocus points that were used. And that, well, with AF, so that the main autofocus point that it used, I believe, is dead center. Let me zoom out a bit. And some of the other surrounding areas. So it did focus on a bit on the helicopter, focused, just general ambient haze in the air, unfortunately. And same with that shot. And then I moved it up so I could focus a bit more on the helicopter itself. But with, you can see here, the jet stream from the exhaust on the helicopter's engine here. And then you've got the blades pushing all that heat down, so this became all haze. Unfortunately, it's just one of those things that happens. There isn't much you can do. And I shot another one in AF.S. It's pretty similar to what I had just shot. and then another AF.S, and this one worked out a bit better. And this was dead center. Yep, so focused right on the people getting rescued. So that was a good result. And yeah, another one with the jet stream coming off the engines. And this was AF.S again in zone. Another AF.S in zone. And my shutter speed should have been a bit higher for that one, I will admit that. And this one here, again in zone, actually worked out. All right, let's go back to AF.C. There's the Snowbirds, which is the Canadian stunt flying dudes, I guess. So you can see where the focus point is moving all over here. So let's see what that translates to. So still very, 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 very hazy, unfortunately. It was actually quite upsetting. But for the most part, and this is multiple subjects, so this is a very good challenge for the autofocus system. You know, figuring out exactly what it's going to pick, what it's going to track. You know, but for the most part, it did actually do a decent job. Just skip ahead here. Okay, so this one it missed, even though the jets are right there. But that I chalk up to not enough contrast, because the clouds are light, the sun's beaming off the jets are white. So at that distance away, it is difficult for the camera to actually pick up. So I don't fault the camera for not being able to pick that one up. Let's go on to here. Yeah, okay, so nailed that. I just wish it wasn't so hazy, and you know, the amount of heat that the jets actually do pick out, or the heat that they create, you know, just makes the environment really difficult to shoot. It was really hot, like, oh man, so hot. But for the most part, it actually did a fairly decent job given the environmental conditions. You know, some backlighting, front lighting, side lighting, the reflections, you know, it's not the easiest environment for a camera to actually acquire focus in. But this is a drastic improvement over the previous generation Pentax cameras in regards to the autofocus. However, as I said, you know, the algorithm at times does seem to be a bit off. It's hard to show in these images because there are multiple jets. But, you know, so here's another one that missed, and that's just environmental haze. It happens. This one got. Now, what I was saying before is the actual algorithm at times does seem to either be just a tad behind or a tad ahead. So I think with the predictive autofocus, oh, right, that's a video. With the predictive autofocus algorithm, I guess as it's calculating the speed of movement and then predicting where it'll be once the shutter releases, there is a slight disconnect in between that. So see, this one here, it actually captured the smoke from the jets and not the actual jets themselves. Even though, let's see here, where is the center of this one? Yeah, so center is closer to where the jets actually are, but it actually captured like down here. So that, not the greatest showing, and it happened again there. Happened again there. And at times while I was shooting, I was purposely not moving the camera to track properly because I wanted the select expanded autofocus to actually move the focus point. I was really trying to stress test the actual tracking capability instead of keeping everything, you know, just dead center. So I was letting the camera actually do its own tracking. This one came out good. It actually did acquire focus on the jet. And let's see, another one. Nope, see, and now it's just a tad bit off. So it didn't maintain that actual subject. It did lose it, but it got it back here, got right on the nose. And this one here on the nose. This one here. Tad bit ahead. And this one just on the wingtip. So for the most part, it is in the correct region. It is in the correct region. So, you know, I was impressed. I mean, yeah, it wasn't perfect, but like I said, the conditions were horrendous. It's very difficult for a camera to work in those conditions. Well, it's not difficult for a camera to work in those conditions. It's hard to get razor sharp images in those conditions. Just the environmental factor, just the jets were too far away, they were too small, it's too much haze in the air. You know, you can see right here, you know, the sun beaming off the glass, you know, and you know, top lighting, and then there was backlighting, and you know, just completely white clouds, and you know, it was a difficult environment to actually shoot in, but for the most part, it actually came out pretty good. And this one, yeah, I was bursting this, and I just missed. I was trying to get that exact crossover point. Let's see which one. Yeah, so these ones came out really good. And so for me, I mean, the most reliable focusing that I was able to actually use was the Select autofocus. Select expanded, you know, just acquire focus with the center select focus point, and you should be good for the most part. See here, I believe, yeah, here the predictive algorithm thought the jets would be over here, but they actually weren't. They were over to the other side. So here's the center. Where's that? Yeah, so the center is right by, just in front of the nose. And this is one of the moments when I was actually letting the camera use the expanded system to actually do its own tracking. Now, I believe this autofocus point should have been a bit further over. So again, it over predicted the location of the jets. It didn't quite nail exactly where the jets were. You know, didn't quite do it. Let's see, how about this one? This one, okay, that one it actually did figure out where they would be, and it maintained it. And this one here, yeah, for the most part, maintained it. That was good. And this one as well. That one as well. That one as well. Okay, so it did actually maintain it for the most part. And let's see, so here it's showing that it missed focus even though the jet is right there. And just before that, okay, so this was the first, yeah, okay, so this was the first shot of the sequence, and it took, yeah, it took 2 shots. On the third shot, it did actually acquire focus. So that's actually not bad. Not bad compared to what we may be used to from the other older generation Pentax cameras. And, you know, don't get me wrong, it's not perfect, but it's not that bad. And this one here, I think I also missed the crossover point. Yeah, just missed it. And there was another one somewhere around here where I really did nail it. If I can find it. I may not be able to find it. If I can't, well then this whole thing was a waste. There we go. So this actually did nail it. It nailed pretty much exactly where the crossover was. That's great. Like this is insane. I love it. I love air shows. These are just crazy. Yeah, so I mean that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I mean, you can use if you're going to use the auto area, my suggestion, just to give the camera a better opportunity to acquire focus, then I suggest you use zone autofocus and keep the subject towards the center of the frame, and you got to be on point with your panning as well. That'll give the camera the best capability of being able to acquire the correct focus point for the subject that you're shooting. However, if you are going to use the full auto area, so all 101 focus points, it becomes an issue with the autofocus algorithm, just due to the fact that if there are a lot of high contrast areas in the foreground or background, it's very easy for the camera to get tricked and jump the focus from your subject to something completely irrelevant. With the subject recognition on, as I've demonstrated in a previous video, it does actually do the eye detect autofocus very well using zone and full auto area as it was intended to be used. From my experiences, if you're going to be doing, action or, of moving subjects, then your best bet would be to use the select autofocus in expanded mode. Try to acquire the target on the center, allow the camera to be able to change the focus point as need be. But again, your panning has to be on point. And some of you may have noticed that my shutter speeds were a bit slow for shooting jets. I was doing that on purpose. I was working on trying to perfect my panning. I could have upped the shutter speed and had more keepers. That is a given. In hindsight, I probably should have done that. Would have given me more keepers. However, I was working on my actual panning because I'm going to a motorsports thing next weekend. So actually this weekend. Whoa, oh man, yeah. Wow. So I'm going to be doing that, and I'm going to be using slower shutter speeds to pan along with the vehicle. So I wanted to get some practice in for that. But anyway, back to the actual topic. So, if you're finding that the select autofocus, as I demonstrated in this video, if you do find that it is jumping focus here and there, and the algorithm isn't quite matching the actual location of your subject as it moves across the frame, then I would suggest reducing the amount of focus points it's expanding to. So you can use select expanded medium, or just use the expanded small, which is the circular reticle in the center of the viewfinder, or you can just use spot focus. So those are my tips. Just acquire the focus first before you start bursting, and just make sure you're using smooth motions as you're panning across, and try to keep the target close to center. And that's pretty much it. If you like the video, leave a like. If you haven't already, please do subscribe. Helps me out. If you'd like to support the channel, I'll leave that information at the bottom of the description. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them down below. And you'll see me in my next video. I'm out.